Good morning from Controlled Disturbance. Well, this is 2 weeks, a week yesterday that I had surgery. And so came in on Sunday to this facility. So this we're going on about 10 days of my perimeters have been mostly this bed right here. They encouraged me to. Yesterday I walked down the hall so I could see out the window, and that was a lot. My perimeters, a lot of times, like when I hauled campers, was out of the 48 states, although I did go into Canada some, but that was a perimeter that had been set for me. Canada looks at our entire history record, not what we're convicted of. They think our American laws are a bit weak. So I had been convicted, or not convicted, I'd been charged with a felony at one time, and so they considered me a felon, and so they put a perimeter up, said I shouldn't come into Canada. Well, I was in a bit of a medical emergency for my brother. He'd had a Widowmaker heart attack and had a load of 4 campers on and went to Grand Prairie. And so after much discussion, that perimeter was opened up, but it was opened up just for a temporary reason. And when we're grazing, a lot of times we have a perimeter fence on our farm, but the road banks in a dry year get to looking like pretty good foraging, especially if you start grazing them early. And with goats or anything that you can do a temporary fence, you can take those animals outside that perimeter. That's what Canada did for me for a short time. I've been accused that I don't color within the lines, and I think that's a very true statement. And if you as a grand artist and you were drawing or painting a hummingbird or a very beautiful butterfly, and you had this nice 2x2 sheet of paper, and you thought that hummingbird would look really well up in one of the corners, and not thinking about your perimeter going to be 18 by 18 when you framed it. So you put this beautiful sky in, and the art in your picture is that hummingbird or that butterfly. But when you mat that picture, you put he's in the perimeter outside, in the outside 6 inches of that sheet of paper. So some of you are laughing at that, but when you don't plan ahead a lot, that's kind of what happens. You get folded off into the edge, and not going to be much of a portrait of a hummingbird or a butterfly if he is outside the matting of the frame of the picture. So the first thing when I do consulting on a homestead or a small acreage, the first thing we have to do is check the perimeter. And then if we find that the perimeter has broken areas, and most of these old farms, they might have some good fence in certain areas, and then maybe great grandpa built a section of fence when he first got there, and so maybe there's a 400 feet somewhere that's was built in 1882, and it's been patched up with a lot of baling wire. The key to some of those old fences is they got flat wire in them or something. That's back into the 1800s. A lot of beautiful barbed wire out there. The perimeters of our great open grasslands used to be wide open. When Native American was here, there was essentially no perimeters. But although they were still set by the rivers, the mountains, the change in the key lines, as Brother Joe Salton talks about, looking at property and seeing the key lines, and he likes to graze on the key lines and treat a certain area a certain way. And so we look at the perimeters and we make sure that that perimeter will both keep the livestock or animals, mobs, in the perimeter of your property, and we also look at what might come onto your property to damage that livestock or carry it away, whether that be a person or a predator of some sort. So the perimeter becomes probably the very most important thing. My friend Greg Judy at Clark does a lot of teaching on taking a basic 60 acres or whatever, and the first thing he's going to tell you is to build a good perimeter. Greg has a lot of 5-wire electric perimeters. Our brother Joel Salton says he couldn't sleep at night if his perimeter fence, his external fence, depended on spark. Although along 36 Highway in Missouri, where the big Charlet concrete statue of a bull is, there's 7 wires high tensile perimeter along that major 4-lane highway. And I know a little secret about that, thanks to Alan, is his uncle put that fence up. I'm sure Alan helped him do it. And I don't believe a day of its life it's ever had spark to it. So there's 7 high tensile wires there that kept Charlet cattle off of that 36 highway. So perimeters are a very good thing. So we used to think that 3, 4, 5 high tensils was a good perimeter fence. Some states have laws. Since we have goats, Laura and I have decided that, at least 6. We've kind of decided on 6 high tensils, with the top one being about 40 inches. We can use a 5-foot timeless post that way and get a good secure corner and put up 6 high tensils. And in our area, we don't have to make every other one hot. We can make all hot, but a lot of areas you need to do at least every other one hot. In that case, you'd probably want to do 7 wires, just because that allows you to have 4 of them hot and 3 as a ground, and just works out better. So, but in our lives, the first perimeter we learned was probably just to stay in one room with toys, and then we were allowed to go out in the yards or whatever. And we didn't used to have yard fences when I grew up. We had yard perimeters. You were educated that you didn't go beyond that perimeter, and that usually come in the form of a swat on the butt. I don't remember too many times of setting in timeout. So perimeters, they're very essential in our relationship with God. He really would like the perimeter to be opened. He would like to come into some places sometimes that we keep him from going, keep him from opening some of those dark old doors, whether it's something we're ashamed of that we did or was done to us, or what we don't like sometimes to allow him in there because we're ashamed of it, or maybe it's become such an important crutch of a reason why we can't do well, or can't expect us to excel or be a good husband or be a good wife, or because we're carrying this around, and wouldn't you know that keeps us from being good. But that's not what our word says. It comes from Jesus all through John 3:16, 14, 15. Notice I'm going backwards. The dyslexic sometimes does that to me, but it's full of reasons why we need to open up that door, let Jesus to come into every part. But back to building the perimeter fence, that would be our first recommendation. And normally, what controls what perimeter fence we use is usually tied to a bank account. Everybody knows if we wanted to get some very high dollar woven wire that was sheep and goat friendly, so it would only have openings about 4 inches anywhere, and it was 48 inches tall, that would be the best perimeter fence. And I like to put a 4-point barbed wire down because grass is what's going to grow up over the bottom of it anyway. So go down, come up about 5 inches from the ground, put in a 4-point barbed wire, come up another 5 inches, and put your 48-inch wire on a very secure post system of your choice, wood or steel, pipe combination. And then I'd put 2 more 4 points on top of that, and then no grazer's fence, even after you got that up, would be complete without a high tensile at about 26 to 29 inches. Vary that if you're doing cattle only, 29, and if you're doing other animals, then might even need to come down to 18 inches. And we found they need to be at least 8 to 12 inches away from the main fence. And of course you can do that with a standoff. There's great standoff ways. If you're doing a hedge post every 4th post or whatever, you can just simply drill the post, put some rebar through it, and put an elbow on the end and put on an insulator. So, or you can do that with fiberglass rods. Drill and drive a fiberglass rod in, and then just fasten your high tensile with an drilled hole to that standoff. Or you can put that standoff in the ground. But that would be the first choice. But when we add those dollars up, most people say, well, what else can I do? Kind of like when back in the garden, when Adam was discovered by God that he had sinned, and well, I guess it was before that. It was when Adam was all alone. He hadn't sinned yet. He hadn't been able to get into mischief because he was still all alone. And don't laugh at us, ladies. But anyways, God was questioning Adam about how he was doing, and Adam said, "Well, I'm kind of lonely. I'd like to have somebody as a companion or a friend." And God said, "Well, that's good. What would you like in that companion?" And, well, someone I could just share my deepest inner thoughts with and trust them with those. Someone that could help me enjoy life, figure out ways to be happy, would do things together, take meals together. Heck, we'd even rest together because we'd know that somebody was near, and that would be comforting. Anyway, so God said, "That sounds good. I could probably fix that up." And he said, "Adam, what, you want me to fix that up right now?" And Adam said, "Well, yeah, but, first question of any good discussion is, what's that going to cost me?" At which point God responded, "An arm and a leg." Adam said, "Oh my gosh, I don't think I want to give up an arm and a leg." He said, "What could I get for a rib, God?" Now, I hope that doesn't come across to you mean. It's all of you that know me know that I believe that Adam was responsible for the sin that it came in the Garden of Eden. So, but we got to have a little humor and make fun of ourselves. And you ladies know that God must have had a sense of humor, or why else would he have created men? So, touche there. But back to the parameters. The perimeter of a homestead should be whatever you can afford, as much as you can afford. And I think most states consider 5 wires a road fence. And so at least 5 wires. Greg Judy has great videos about that, of how to space that all out. But if you're doing the smaller mammals, which seems like a lot of people are doing these smaller ruminants now, herd sheep and goats and So we really got to think about more wars in that situation. And if you're like us with chickens, um, a 7 war fence is a good choice, or our 6, or so you're going to knock down some of those predators at least. The whole design of a perimeter is to set boundaries, to speak with authority that this is where I want you to be. So with your animals, I want you to be in here at all times, although I will help you decide where you're at different times. With our regenerative process, we move 9 or 10 species together in harmony over an area, and from 30 to 120-day rotations, and depending on the level of disturbance we want. But we need that perimeter, and our lives need perimeters. Laura and I set a perimeter when our relationship began. She sent this detailed letter to me thinking that, surely I wouldn't be interested in that we would lead our lives pure until we were married and had the authority by God to come together physically. And that was my desire too. And so we laugh now once we give that to God and place that in His hands, of how good He was at helping us honor that. There's some very humorous things where He had to help us out a little bit, and but we achieved it, and it's a beautiful thing to follow all of God's rules. And that's what our perimeter fences do for us, is just they set a boundary, they establish it, they speak authority over a certain area. And so when we put that into our lives, we need those boundaries. But inside that boundary, then we need to start doing some cleansing, some serious looking of what area can we start a regenerative process in? What area can we do a controlled disturbance in that's going to bring about change? And the change comes with new life. And probably tomorrow we're going to talk about humus, and not laughter or humor. My stepfather always said, old poor farm, if people just go out and laugh over it a lot, had a lot of good jokes, well, that would bring a lot of humorous, he said, to it. He liked to play on words and wink at you. And so, but yeah, we're going to talk about humus and how that brings life. And that's a very deep subject, and but it's a very light one. So, but let's continue to think about the controlled disturbance, establish our perimeters, whether that be in our lives or relationships, or in our own what we allow for ourselves. We set some kind of perimeter, because inside of that perimeter we would like to do a regenerative process, and we're going to do that through a controlled disturbance. If you do not control that disturbance, it's not going to bring about new life and change. With animals in the process of doing regenerative farming, our changes come when we're open to doing a very maximum controlled disturbance. I've seen grazers show YouTube videos of taking down 4 and 6 foot of cockleburs and horseweeds in about 20 minutes with a herd of cattle. Some of you might want to put in the comments of where you might have seen that video. Most of us know where that is, but that'd be a great thing to comment on. And you can also comment on what is your perimeter fence? What is your perimeter fence of choice? And then if you want to comment on ways that you need to set a perimeter, I recommend getting a mentor and getting a relationship partner, somebody that's been through what you've been through, and they can help you establish new perimeters in your life, places that you should avoid or things that you should keep away from you. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's very healthy. We need a controlled disturbance on our homestead, on our regenerative farm. We need a controlled disturbance. The more species of animals we can use to make that controlled disturbance, the more regeneration is going to happen to our farms. And thus with our life, if we can just set some parameters, make some changes today to where we are in control of what changes take about in our lives, in our relationships. And the first place to make changes is your relationship with your Lord and your Savior. And I just trust today that if you haven't begun that initial step of setting a perimeter up and claiming land inside your heart to give your heart to Jesus Christ, you should find somebody today and make that happen. That'd be a good thing to put in the comment section. Reverend Hank, today I set some perimeters and I invited Jesus into that area, and we're going to do some controlled disturbance. So let me hear from you. And this one got a little bit long, and I feel like I've rambled around a little bit, but as long as I pray before I start these, the Holy Spirit is always going to take us wherever He wants us to go. He will take us as far as we allow Him to. But if you're traveling today or going through life and you haven't established that perimeter and claimed land for the Lord, I hope you do it soon. I hope you do it today, because time could be very short. The perimeter of this world is set. We just don't know where it is. This world as we know today is going to stop. But a lot of the trained scholars I know think that maybe the gates might be starting to roll down. But I hope not. I got a lot of life that I want to live with my beautiful bride, and we're just starting our regenerative process, both on our lives and on our homestead and on our commercial farm. It's been an ongoing process for about 40 years. And so, well, I'm glad you're joining me today. And as I like to say over on the other channel, the Natural Grandma channel, we wish that you were having this good a day. Controlled Disturbance with Reverend Hank.